and welcome to the Parents Podcast, brought to you by UCAS. This is your trusted guide to everything when it comes to education. My name's John Smith, and in today's episode, we're taking a look at the world of apprenticeships from entry to degree level. We're going to find out more about how they work. We're going to address some key questions as well and find out about the opportunities that are available too. We're even going to talk about how they can differ when it comes to your social life, when it comes to the traditional academic route. And we're doing all of that with the help of my guests on the podcast today. I'm delighted to welcome Tash Tustin, who's an apprentice consultant with Atkins Realis, and Gina Visram, who's a career coach and consultant. Hi both. So Gina, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Gina, I'm a careers coach and consultant, as you mentioned, and independently I work under Your Career in Future, which is a career coaching provider for students and graduates. I also have the joy of working in a school as a head of careers, and I also work in a university as a careers consultant. So I have the pleasure of supporting students from a range of directions, and also in a career content through a podcast called Dive Into Your Career.
Fantastic. Lots to talk about then. And Tash, tell me a little bit about you and how your apprenticeship's going.
So I'm a current degree apprentice. So I work for Atkins Realis. My degree is in project management. So I spend kind of 1 day a week studying towards that degree. And then I spend the other 4 days a week kind of delivering value for all of our kind of range of clients. I started in September 2021. So I'm kind of in the last year now. Big final push to get university completed, which I'm quite excited about. And then I'll be sort of off the apprenticeship scheme and be a fully fledged management consultant with Atkins Realis.
Fantastic. So lots for us to talk about. We're going to really get into the nitty gritty of apprenticeships and how they work. And I think, Tash, we'll start with you because it'd be really interesting to find out perhaps what a typical week has looked like at points throughout your apprenticeship. Can you give me the idea of a typical sort of week?
So normally Mondays for me, the client's pretty quiet. So I quite like Mondays as my sort of university day. So I'll spend that, maybe writing assignments, attending lectures, anything university wise that needs to get done, I will do it on that day. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I normally, I work for our clients. So I might be going to client site, having project meetings, meeting with my team, meeting with kind of all my different clients. And just kind of really getting stuck in and being able to apply what I'm learning on the Monday for that formal qualification, then into sort of real life scenarios and really getting that on project experience.
You've already picked up there on a really important point, that academic study versus the on the job experience. How have you found that balance?
It's definitely challenging at sometimes. For me, I absolutely love my job. Sometimes I probably do more hours, on the job than I should be doing. And then sometimes I have to spend, doing some assignments and stuff like that on the odd weekend if I've got a big deadline coming up. But generally it's been okay. I think through all kind of, if you did a normal degree as well, there's always peaks and troughs. So sometimes it'll be like really peak, going to get a lot of this university stuff done, feeling quite kind of stressed, trying to balance that with then my client work. But everyone I work with is super supportive. And really, they understand that it is stressful. A lot of people have done degrees, they are a lot of work, and really help me kind of manage that by, giving me extra time to do university if I need it, and supporting me in kind of a number of different ways.
Gina, we've touched on there a little bit of how it can work when it comes to that balance. Is it the same for all apprenticeships when it comes to how the employer works with the person who is providing that academic side of things?
It isn't the same with all apprenticeships, but what's really useful for parents to understand so that they can support their children on this journey is that typically it's 80-20. So 80% on the job, doing the job, actually making it happen, and 20% learning, training in whatever space that is in. Now, that can vary. So it might be, as Tash mentioned, it might be 1 day a week university, 4 days a week on the job. But it might actually be that you're working 5 days a week on the job, and then you have a block where for 2 or 3 weeks you are at your training provider or at university. So this really will vary by organisation. So it's one of the questions to ask, or one of the things to read about when you're looking into the opportunities.
Might be something to talk to your child about then, that balance, what's right for them when they are looking at applying. And also a big part of it is the different levels that are available as well.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So apprenticeships are available in level 2 through to 7. So level 7 and level 6, those are considered to be degree apprenticeships. So level 6 being the equivalent to an undergraduate degree, level 7 being the equivalent to a master's degree. Now, when you think about what your children might currently be doing at school, A levels or T levels or BTECs or equivalent, those are considered to be level 3. So you might think that when your child is applying to do an apprenticeship, they need to look at level 4 or above, logically speaking, but that actually isn't the case. So it is really normal to look at level 3 options, look at level 4 options as well, and go in at any of those levels if your child is going in at a kind of post-18 stage.
And when we talk about the equivalent, when it's equivalent to an undergraduate degree or a master's degree, do employers view them in the same way? Are they equivalent?
Oh, such a good question. I think sometimes there is a little bit of an education process that's needed. It's a little bit like if you were on the UCAS website and you were looking at universities and they'll say, they need these grades for A-level or equivalent, whether that's Scottish Highers or whether that's IB or whether that's any other system in another part of the world. So in terms of how it is laid out by our Department for Education, by what it is, that is really how they do look at it. But yes, there might need to be a little bit of an education process in some spaces.
And Tash, for you, then you talked about it being a degree apprenticeship. So what level have you been going in at?
So mine's level 6. At the end of my apprenticeship, I'll achieve a BSc degree in project management from Northumbria University.
One of the things that I was really keen to share with parents today is that when you're applying for an apprenticeship, you really are applying for a job. So that's, when you're looking at these opportunities and when you're supporting your children to do that, it's not a case of looking at the university. What university do you want to go to? Actually, it's what company do you want to work with? What kind of job do you want to do? And it's the employer that makes the link with the relevant training provider. If, it's a not a degree apprenticeship, so if it's one of the other levels, or what university is ultimately are your students qualifying through. Because Tash, have you been to your university?
So my course is probably a bit strange, but I think other apprentices experience it. So I've never been to my university. My course is fully delivered virtually. So I spend 1 day a week, all my lectures are virtual. I've never, apart from the other apprentices in my company, I've never met anyone from the course, never met anyone from Northumbria University. And the first time I'll go there is when I graduate, which is a bit strange.
And when you're out there and you're looking at some of these options, perhaps with your child, are there enough options out there to start with? When it comes to the opportunities in apprenticeships, do you feel that there are those opportunities out there?
Well, one of the most exciting things I'd say in the last 10 decades is that when we think about apprenticeships, we think about them in a very different way to how we thought about them even just a few years prior. So what I mean by that is often when you think about apprenticeships, you think about very vocational work, important work, electricians, plumbers, hairdressers. So that's often what you would think about when it comes to apprentices. Now we're seeing apprentices in the healthcare space, in digital, in media, in the built environment, and in all sorts of spaces, and including in finance. And one of the ones where we're really watching this space is there's a doctor apprenticeship, a medical apprenticeship, which is due to be signed off and happening at some point as well. So are there enough sectors? I'd say it's really exciting. There are lots of sectors that you can get apprenticeships in, but it is constantly evolving. So I wouldn't get complacent about it. So if you think that you know exactly what it's like because you supported one of your children 3 years ago, things are really changing all the time. So yeah, keep reaching out to resources like this to keep up to date.
Does it depend where you live a little bit, Gina, as well, in terms of the opportunities that are available?
Unfortunately, yes, in a way, in that it's kind of like with jobs, right? So there are some places around the UK where it feels like there are more jobs, and sometimes that's some of the bigger cities. Sometimes it's certain towns where you have big companies there that are headquartered. But so really it's kind of a reflection in that way. Unless an organization is really big on remote work or hybrid working, which some may be, of course, which would be great. If that's the case, then it is a little bit more wide open. But otherwise, it kind of reflects the job market, because an apprenticeship is a job.
And Tash, when you found out that there was an opportunity for you to do an apprenticeship in something that you really wanted to do, how did you feel?
It felt amazing, really, that there was even, there was an option to do a degree apprenticeship and really get my foot in the door in kind of management consultant and go into that career. I guess I was really lucky from a perspective that my parents were, with university, generally you move away, so they were really supportive and willing to help me, move out, rent a house, wherever I needed to live for my job. And I was really lucky that, I had that support around me. So I actually moved to Bristol for my degree apprenticeship, from kind of living in a small village near Oxford, which was quite a big change moving to a city. But it meant that I could walk to our offices, and I was then able to, be in the office a lot and have that experience of kind of living on my own, doing my own washing, cooking, which was hard sometimes, when you just landed in a new job and you haven't really ever worked before. But it was a really good experience, and I was able to kind of learn everything from that taking care of yourself that you'd get from typical university life.
Were your parents supportive with that?
Yeah, they were so supportive. They helped me move, helped me find a house to live in. They were really helpful for that kind of the whole process. My mum helped me with write my applications. When I saw kind of the Atkins Realis apprenticeship opportunity, it was my mum that actually said, Tash, you're really organised, you might like project management. And it eventually kind of, when I joined, evolved more into management consultancy, and I understood all the kind of different disciplines available to me. But she really got me kind of to look at the company, and start helping me get through the application process. And as I got through all the different steps more, I realised actually I really want to work here. And what Gina said earlier, it's like you are shopping for a job. You need to work somewhere that aligns with your values and kind of, what you like. And I thought Atkins Realis was making a really big difference on the world with the projects that we worked on. And it aligned quite a few of my kind of personal values in terms of integrity, innovation, collaboration. So that was a really good kind of tick in the box for me. And I eventually got the apprenticeship, so I was very happy about.
Do you know how competitive it was to get in? Do you ever hear afterwards, X number of people applied for this and you did it?
I think over 100 people applied, which I think is very low compared to nowadays, where you get thousands and thousands of people applying. But then I think they did telephone interviews of about 30 people, and then whittled it down to, I think, only maybe 10, 15 people went to the assessment centre, and then it ended up being for I think 9 people got the role in the end. So I think it's arguably quite good odds compared to nowadays, where literally thousands and thousands of people are applying for these apprenticeships.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the things that I was going to say is I'm blessed to sort of really see it from a range of stages. So both through my independent work, but also I work at a school, Allain School, and I work at the London School of Economics as well as a freelance careers consultant. And I mention this because you can imagine management consulting is one of those things that's really of interest, certainly for LSE students, as well as the other things that they're interested in doing. Mm-hmm. It is, competitive is the word, right? Whether it comes to applying for university, certainly applying for graduate jobs, as well as applying for apprenticeships or degree apprenticeships. So I never want that to put parents off. I never want that to put their kids off. I think it's really important to recognise that that's the nature of it. Your only guarantee of not securing an opportunity is not to apply. So you absolutely might as well go for it. And at this stage, there are still less people applying for apprenticeships as competitive as they're getting, then will be applying for jobs at the graduate stage kind of 3 or 4 years later. So yeah, I think anything is, at the very least, you might as well see applications as practice, right? In that you get to practice filling in application forms and doing interviews and building your commercial awareness to be able to perform well in interviews and all of those sorts of things that are going to be incredibly important from this stage for all of the young people that the parents here are supporting. So, because if it's not an apprenticeship at this stage, it's going to be a spring week, or it's going to be an internship, or it's going to be a part-time job, or it's going to be a graduate job. So this is a really good time to start to understand and become less intimidated by the processes that it's going to take to get into whatever world of workspace that our young people are going to be entering.
And Tash, because you made that move, did you get any support to do that, or did you do it off your own back?
I personally didn't. I kind of had my parents' support, did it off my own back. But I do know a few other apprentices who did get some support. I think it really does depend on kind of the situation, the employer. There's so many kind of variables involved. So it's definitely something that you would have to discuss with your employer once you've secured that apprenticeship.
Is that an important point, Gina, to have that conversation as a part of the application process or the interview when it comes to relocation, and if there could be support there for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, we're looking at different jobs, different companies, different processes, right? So it's a great question to ask as part of the process, whether it's at the stage where you're being offered the role, which is obviously a very exciting time, or whether you want to ask a little bit earlier in the process. So really the question is more around, is there any support from the organisation when it comes to relocation? So it's a great question, and each company will be able to give you their response.
Are some industries, and we talked about a few of them earlier on, more competitive to get into than others, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so, because there are still some that have skill shortages. So when it comes to the built environment, and certainly some of the more kind of practical roles, whether that does relate to, level 2 or level 3 in bricklaying or similar sorts of roles, I think we still need, as a country, we still need more people to apply to those sorts of positions. Whereas if you're looking at, say, the solicitor apprenticeships, which is another really exciting one that's come up in the last few years, or the finance apprenticeships, I think we're seeing more and more people applying. Even though the statistics are showing us that over the last 10 years, there are now less apprenticeships available than there were some time ago. So, but when it comes to statistics like that, I always think it's fine to know them, but apply.
Yeah.
I think as well, the number of parents I speak to that also forget, yes, apprenticeships are really competitive, but don't forget you can still apply to university. Just because you apply to an apprenticeship does not mean you can't, go through UCAS's processes, apply, pick your 5 universities and, get offers. I applied to Loughborough University to study politics and economics because for me, as much as I wanted to do an apprenticeship, it's not guaranteed. I knew it was very competitive. And it was, if anything, a bit more of like that kind of backup. Like if I don't get an apprenticeship, then I can go to university and go down that route and, do the classic degree and then look for those graduate roles. You can still apply. And I would highly, highly recommend you applying to both because like for me, I actually deferred my place at university in case I didn't like my apprenticeship. Luckily I did and it was all fine. But, you never know what's going to happen. And then at least you've got that place and you don't need to sort of reapply and you can apply with your school support. So I'd highly recommend applying to both.
No, and that's really good advice. I mean, it's the same at Alain's. One of the students that we're supporting at the moment or for this cycle, has applied to sort of history and English related degrees and is now really looking for solicitor apprenticeships. And it's not as straightforward as it could be because she would actually really love to do more human rights related law than, say, commercial law. And when it comes to apprenticeships at the moment, you see more within commercial law. So it's just quite an interesting thing to navigate. But the determination is going to be key. And I think as parents, and I hope parents are going to be like your parents are, just sort of really cheerleading on their children to look at their options. And I think at this age and stage, let's look at all of the options that are available and, look at apprenticeships and decide whether, that feels like a good option or not. As Tash said, really apply in a few different directions. If you're within your school year, you can still get all of that support from your school. And of course, many schools support students even when they're on gap years or if they're still sort of working out what it is that they want to do. But yeah, that kind of parental support is really key. But you do need to, and the students need to, at the support of their parents, get really organised, because it is not a streamlined system when it comes to applying for apprenticeships. So there's an amount of tenacity needed, but it's absolutely worth it.
And Tash, for you, interesting that you went down both routes. We're very open to going down both of those routes as well. What about your parents? Because if you're listening at home from that point of view, were they supportive of both those routes? Were one leaning one way or the other?
They were both supportive of kind of either routes. They mostly just wanted me to be happy. I think my dad was very much keen that I definitely did a degree apprenticeship rather than maybe like some of the others where you get that more level 4 qualification. He did a degree, and for me personally, I sort of wanted a degree because once you've got that, you sort of got it forever. And I also wanted to pursue sort of further studies as well, and see what university, not the life, but the study was like. So they definitely preferred me to maybe go down that more degree apprenticeship route. But yeah, they were really supportive with whatever direction, whatever worked for me. They were happy to help. My mum helped me with my like personal statement and everything anyway, and things like choosing universities. I was in COVID, so I didn't get to go to any universities, but they would have definitely have come with me if I was able to go to any of them. I think maybe that didn't help with, especially for my year, I was sort of applying blind because I didn't get to go to any of them. But yeah, they were the most supportive parents throughout the whole process, especially when, apprenticeships are competitive. You probably are going to get knocked down. I didn't get every single apprenticeship I applied to. I think I applied to about 15, and I think I got, obviously only accepted one. But you just have to really kind of encourage your children to stay resilient. Like you will, get one eventually. You got to keep going. Every time I'd get knocked down, my mum would really encourage me, get back on UCAS's website, see what else is out there. There's apprenticeships coming up every single day. There's always a new apprenticeship on the UCAS website. And then she'd support me with applying for it. And yeah, if you get knocked down, it's a part of life. You really just have to stay resilient. And parents as well, support your children. Because no one likes rejection. And it can be especially hard when you're 18 and this might be the first rejection you've ever faced. If you've haven't had a job, or university generally don't get rejected depending on where you apply. So yeah, my biggest bit of advice is just support them, be there for them, because it is challenging, it is hard, and it's ultimately competitive.
And what about for you, when you look back now over the last few years, again, considering you were taking a look at both of those routes and working out what was best for you, do you feel like you missed out on the more traditional university experience at all?
I don't think I did personally, because I was able to, I moved out, I moved in with my partner. Atkins Realis at the time, we had loads of different socials. So often they'd put on kind of company socials where they'd pay for your tickets to go to, I think I went to like Oktoberfest and loads of different events to have kind of fun with the other apprentices. Because I work for quite a big company, there's loads of different apprentices joining at the same time as you in different disciplines. I'm in a cohort with 9 other people. So that was a really good way of, making friends. And everyone, it's a bit like university in a sense, but everyone's in the same boat. Some people might have moved away from their family, like I had. This is normally it's people's kind of first jobs, and that everyone goes through the same struggle, and you kind of go through it together, and you really support each other. Like my year at the moment, we're going through our kind of big university submission, and we're all just really kind of there for each other because we understand it is balancing that work and study is difficult. So it's nice to have those people around you, especially that really get it. Some of my friends, from kind of when I was at school are like, well, why would you want to do that? They don't really understand kind of like my choice in that sense. So it's nice that you can have those other apprentices to talk to and get support from them.
You touched on being resilient a moment ago. I'm sure that's a big part of it when you're coming to apply for apprenticeships and go through the process. And it can be more tricky because it doesn't all happen at the same time, does it? Like a traditional university application, Gina. So talk me through the key steps, things you're looking out for in the year. I know things like smart alerts from UCAS are really useful for that, but what you're looking out for and how the application can work.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that is quite useful is to have an awareness of the sort of industry that you want to be in and the sort of role that you're looking for. So I would imagine you knowing that you wanted to do management consulting, that really helped you to go onto the UCAS site or go into LinkedIn Jobs or go into wherever it might be that you can look at opportunities. That will help you to really create the sort of alerts that you want to create. So there is a bit of a sort of discovery process first, if there isn't already an awareness of where you might want to start your career. And by the way, I think that's one of the really important things to talk about, is that these days our careers are 50 plus years long. So our lovely parents that are watching this many of them are working, may have been working for a number of years, will still be working for a number of years. So one of the things that I've noticed is that students can tend to put pressure on themselves, which may sometimes come from parents, may sometimes be from themselves, where they say, oh, I don't really know what it is that I want to do in the future. Actually, what you're looking at when you're 16, 17, 18 years old is where you're interested in starting your career. And the resilience piece is really important, and looking at the range of options and being ready to, as I said, be ready with your CVs and cover letters. That's normally part of the process, or application forms. Some industries will have assessment centres, as you mentioned, as part of the process, and more standard interviews. Some of those interviews will be online with somebody on the other side. Some of them will be asynchronous, which means that it's a question that comes up on the screen and you're looking at the screen and you're answering the question in a certain amount of time. So what you're really doing is you're kind of accelerating some of that learning curve that university students might be doing a touch later. But to be fair, they will only be doing it a little bit later, because if you go the traditional university route, you're probably applying for internships and things like that even while you're a student. But yeah, you really kind of accelerate that learning curve by applying at this point.
And considering how competitive we've said some of them can be, as a parent, how can you then support your child through that process, do you think?
So I think lean into schools, colleges, wherever it is that your child is now, because typically there will be a careers person or department. And my goodness, like it is lovely when a young person comes to my door and says, Miss, I've got an interview for this, this, and this. Can can we do a practice? Like, use all of the resources that you have. So start with school, be that kind of really supportive parent as well, who is, if you've got experience of interviews and that sort of thing and you can practice, then do that. And there are loads of resources as well, whether it's on UCAS, whether it is, there are varying podcasts sort of targeted at parents as well and students. And so lots of content online as well. And I know one of the things that I certainly try and do with mine is I think about, well, what will parents benefit from hearing? What will students benefit from hearing on this early career journey? And sometimes even websites, for example. So I think, thinking of management consulting, one of the organizations, I think it's Bain, they have examples of like case study interviews on their website. So loads of resources. You've just got to tap into them.
Yeah, take a look and see what you can find as well. I think from both of you, it'd be really interesting to get one top tip for parents listening to this when it comes to supporting your child through that process. I know, Tash, you said your parents are really supportive and helped you along the way, but let's start with you. What perhaps one top tip would you give to a parent listening to this when it comes to supporting their child through the process?
I think, like I said earlier, just really try and be there for them, because they probably will face rejection, and no one likes rejection. It is hard. And just, be that person, be willing to listen and just try and help them as much as possible. Like, do things like practice interviews with them if you can. And really, maybe it's that you find some of the resources and send it to them on WhatsApp or something. Because it can be hard when you're faced with a big mass of information as a student, especially if they're going through things like mock exams, the actual exams, revising. It can be quite stressful. So just really try and be there for them and just support them in any way you can along the journey, because it's not, it's not necessarily easy. There will be bumps in the road, and just be that, pillar of support for them.
And Gina, what would you say?
I would say that it's really important to remember that every child, every young person is different. So as a parent, if you have 3 kids, it doesn't mean that each of them are going to go down the same route. So, which ultimately probably leads to your point, Tash, which is being open and being supportive and being curious. And curiosity and exploration is a word that I use with the parents that I come across and the students that I support all the time, because it's not about making decisions before you've done the research. It's about, if you're curious about entering a certain field, look at the range of ways that you can do that. That will include traditional university, that will include university with a placement year, that will include degree apprenticeships, that will include apprenticeships at a range of levels. So in the UK, we are very lucky in that there are an increasing amount of routes and they're all very, very well respected. One of the things that is worth bearing in mind is that if anybody does want to have an international career, sometimes not everywhere in the world looks beyond degrees in the way that we do here in the UK. So again, apprenticeships are then still an option, but it might be more important to do a level 6 or level 7 one. But there really are apprenticeships for everybody. So that would be my main tip. Look at that as well as university and let each of your children go the route that is best for them.
Some really, really useful advice and some brilliant insights into what it's been like for you as well, Tash. So Tash and Gina, thank you so much for joining me on the Parents Podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you for joining us as well for today's Parents Podcast, as we've taken a look into the world of apprenticeships from entry to degree level. We found out about the different industries and how you can best support your child through applications and into their future as well. There are some brilliant resources online on the UCAS Hub and Smart Alerts, which we've mentioned, and a brilliant careers finder as well. So I hope today has been useful. Thank you for joining me for today's Parents Podcast, and I hope you'll come back again next time.